My name is Nancy Minnie, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager here at Madeira, USA. Welcome to this installment of Madeira's Community Conversation Series. I'll be talking with Joyce Jagger about ways to help your business grow. Joyce Jagger, the embroidery coach, is well recognized in the area of embroidery business education. She has a passion to help embroiderers improve their skills and to provide a higher quality embroidery and increase their profitability. Her Rapid Start Embroidery Coach Training Center allows Joyce to offer hands-on training in a controlled atmosphere that is conducive to quality work and embroidery business success. She helps small businesses and large businesses and everyone in between. And you can learn more about Joyce at her offerings at theembroiderycoach.com. Welcome, Joyce.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for inviting me.
So today I wanted to start with, so you have a couple of books out there. Maybe talk a little bit about them and and let people know what they'll learn from those books.
The Truth About Embroidery Business Success, I wrote quite a while ago. It wasn't really too long after I got started in the coaching business. And it's mainly from my experiences and things that I thought was important for people that they had to know in the embroidery industry. Now, I am in the process of writing another book. It's called Stop the Chaos, Building a Thriving Embroidery Business. And I've also just completed a book right now, a short Kindle book on embroidery, and it is called Training a Confident Embroidery Machine Operator. And I'm going to be writing a whole series of these little short Kindle books about embroidery. And the other book that I'm writing, Stop the Chaos, this is more on organization and how you really do need to put your business together, the steps that you need to take. The number one thing is producing high quality embroidery. That is number one. That's the most important thing that people need to learn when they are putting their business together. Number two is pricing. You got to price right. Number three is setting up your books so you know where you are. And people don't even think about that part of their business. And
I think that's where the chaos kind of comes in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you've got to have your book set up correctly so that your cash comes in faster and you're much more organized. And then the step number 4 basically is how to train your people right so that you're all on the same page. And it takes a lot of the burden off of the embroidery business owner. So, and everything else after that is just all about organization and filling in the rest of the pieces.
It sounds so simple.
It sure does, doesn't it?
It does. I know from experience, the embroidery part is in and of itself, getting that quality embroidery is a big step for sure.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And I agree. It is the most important. It is very important because you can do all the other stuff afterwards. But if you're not providing your customers with that quality embroidery, and, they're just not going to come back to you, your customers.
That is a fact.
Yeah. If you think back, this is something we've been focusing on a lot. If you think back about when you first started, you're doing, kind of your crafting embroidery at the beginning, then became the mentor that you are now. Looking back, what do you think was the most surprising thing that you learned along the way?
Most surprising thing that I learned along the way, I would say, was in helping embroiderers and looking back on my own journey, it was pricing your products right, pricing them for a profit. And people are so resistant to change, and they've got a lot of deep-seated beliefs that they have got to be in line with their competition. If they don't, they're not going to get the work. And that is just so, it's not true. Right.
And I find that with embroiderers very often asking that question, how do I price? And in your training, you would address that for sure.
Absolutely.
Would there be a couple of things that you could share? Just a couple pointers to start with as far as pricing goes.
You have to know your numbers.
Yeah.
You have to know what your break-even point is, That is the most important thing, and how much you need to add as a profit. But if you don't know your numbers right off the bat, you're not going to be able to price right.
Right.
Just a little while ago, 2 months ago, I had a pricing boot camp where I spent one whole day going through my entire program and teaching people how to price, and they were blown away. I had one gentleman that was so surprised at how he was pricing compared to how he learned what he learned in the program, that he said that his profit was going to increase by 30%.
Wow.
And he was so excited.
Right.
And people get the idea that your customers are going to complain, oh my gosh, the price is too high, I'm going to go someplace else. No,
Right.
they're not going to complain. If you price right and you've got the high quality, that's the name of the game.
Right. I think people's worth is probably underestimated when it comes to pricing.
Especially women.
Yes. Yep. I mean, when you think about how much you'd like to be paid for an hour's worth of work, that they kind of stymie when it comes to adding that into the cost.
Yeah.
But it really is, probably one of the most important parts of pricing.
You have got to have your salary built into your pricing structure.
Right.
Another thing that you need to have built in is growth. You need to have money built into that pricing structure for more equipment. Your equipment's not going to last forever.
Right.
Or you want to grow and you need another machine.
Right.
If the price isn't built into your pricing structure, you're not going to have any money to get it.
Well, thank you for those. So what would be the easiest thing a new embroiderer can do to increase their profitability?
Focus on their quality.
Okay.
Absolutely. Focus on their quality. They need to learn how to create small lettering and how to make it just pop off the page. I mean, you can have a logo that is not 100% perfect. However, if it's got small lettering on it and that looks fantastic, that's what they see.
Right.
That's the part that stands out.
That's what's popping out for sure.
Yeah. And if it doesn't look fantastic, it's not good.
Right.
And they need to focus on getting an excellent quality product. That is, like I said, that's number one.
Right. One of the things I do in training with embroiderers is to, just because something looks good when it comes off your machine, you might press it and it looks great when you give it to the customer. If you're not doing some testing with laundering, with the washing and drying to see what it's going to look like after the fact, you might find that design that you sent out the door looking good is no longer looking good after a couple of washes. So I think especially when you're brand new and, you're just learning the ins and outs of all the different variables within embroidery, machine embroidery, doing that testing after the fact is going to be the test of time of what an embroiderer is going to see.
That is correct. One of those important things is realizing and learning what types of backings or stabilizers to be using with each type of product. And each type of fabric, the style of lettering, and I mean mainly it's the type of fabric that you're working on. And an awful lot of people feel that, okay, we've got a lot of stitches in here, so now we need to add a lot more backing, and that isn't necessarily true.
Right. Yeah. There's so many embroidery backing stabilizers that are out there. I call the original ones more basic cutaways, basic tearaways, and then you get into the specialty ones. The ones that kind of stand out a little more prominent are the ones for the performance wear. Those thin, slippery garments. So there's some great stabilizers. There's some great stabilizers out there specifically for those products.
Correct.
And many, many more different stabilizers for different projects, and knowing what those are. We recently came out with a guide specific for backing. It's about a 20-page, everything you need to know about backing. And that's up on our website, Madeira USA. I know that you and I, Joyce, have worked back and forth with the backings. as well. And we're pretty much, on point with each other when it comes to the type of backings to use for what. So that's really important, like you said, to know which ones are going to hold up and which ones won't.
And I have on my website, I have a sheet, my favorite backings, and one of them is all by Madeira.
Yeah.
So it's got all the listing of the backings and what you use it for.
Yes.
That they can download from my website.
Awesome. That's good. So let's talk about the industry and how much it's changed. I'd like to go 3 years back and maybe even 5 years back. What kind of trends within the industry have you seen come about?
Well, a lot has changed. And I mean, backings are one of them. The pandemic just brought about so many changes. And that's where I have discovered most of my changes, because there were so many embroiderers that just went out of business. And through no fault of their own. I mean, the government came along and was shutting everybody down. And I tried very hard to try to teach them that they could do all of their selling and working with their customers virtually. And they just couldn't seem to grasp that. That was a tough one.
Right. It's really hard for people that are not used to going in that direction. So yeah, it was a bit of survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
When it came to that. And, I think as many people that did go out of business, there was, through attrition, it was almost equally, if not more, businesses were kind of coming on as well, buying new machines and just looking at embroidery as a new avenue from their old life. And there's just so many opportunities out there. So as far as the industry, through the pandemic, it seems to have certainly survived and doing okay as far as that. Before, say 5 years ago, was there anything trend-wise that you noticed?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really.
Yeah.
In my training, I'm all about the basics. And if you can learn the basics of hooping, the basics of how to hoop, what the end result should be, the basics of all of your needles, your backings, your software. Not all software is equal. Not at all. And I have an awful lot of embroiderers that use home software, and they have a tough time with that. However, there are some home softwares out there that are great, but there's others that they leave something to be desired. You've got to work with what you've got. However, if you don't have a good quality software to work with, you are not going to be able to produce a high quality product. Right. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
So again, it's all about the basics. If you learn those basics and keep working with those and focus on your basics and your high quality, it doesn't really matter what happens. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's actually very in line with the education that I've been taking on recently. I talked about the backing guide that we have out there. I call it a complete guide. And, when you talk about the basics, I stress in the beginning, the difference between cutaway and tearaway and what they're used for. And those are the basics. And once you understand those, you can translate that pretty much to anything.
That is correct.
I also we did a needle guide as well. And it's the same. There's 2 elements up there. You're choosing a needle based on the size is based on the thread, and the point is based on the fabric. And those are, again, those are 2 basic elements that if you can grasp those, you can do whatever you need to do when it comes to embroidery and know them. So I love that we're both thinking about the basics, and that's how it's so important, because there really are so many variables when it comes to machine embroidery. But if you know the basics and where to start, you can almost always get and choose, and you can get that quality embroidery.
That is correct.
By using those. And you talked about, the top quality software. The same goes for the products as well. There's a lot of low-end products out there for machine embroidery. And while some can get you, okay embroidery, the chances of it being as good as a higher quality embroidery is, just not going to happen. So
right.
you get what you pay for, whether it's your embroidery thread or your apparel that you're purchasing.
Yes, or all of your supplies. You don't ever, ever, ever want to purchase a cheap or inexpensive supply for your embroidery.
Right.
Because it shows up.
Not only does it show up, but it also eats up your time at the machine or your embroiderer's machine, your embroiderer. Because time is money, you're paying them to do something. And if they're fighting with a poor quality product, whether it's that apparel, buying something at the dollar store is just simply it's not gonna end well.
That's right.
So, choose from a reputable apparel company when you're choosing.
Correct. Yes. No, I started out, this pricing deal, I started out, many years ago. I know how people feel, because I felt the same way, and I struggled with pricing and building my business for 15 years until I got the right mentor. And because up to that point, I had no mentor. I didn't know anything about anything. Didn't know anything about embroidery when I started. Didn't know anything about business. And finally, when I got the right mentor, which was my accountant, and he taught me how to totally organize my business, how to create a profitable pricing structure and everything. And that's all what I teach today. And we were talking about the easiest way for a customer or a new embroiderer to build their business. And the easiest way, again, is to learn what quality is. Now, and I have been offering my embroiderers. Do you know what quality is? If you don't know, send me a sew out.
Yeah.
I will go over it. We'll do a Zoom call, and I will tell you what you need to do.
Right.
And that helps them a lot. But if they focus on their quality and find out if they are creating good quality or not, because like I said, many of them don't even know.
Right.
There are so many mediocre embroiderers out there.
Yeah.
And they think that they can type in those letters from their software and go to the machine and sew it out.
Right.
It's going to be good. Well, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
There's so many little things to learn. You've got your pull compensation, you've got your density, you've got your underlay stitching, and your underlay stitching depends on the type of the letter, the size of the letter, the type of fabric that you're working with.
Yep.
Everything. And you've got to understand and know exactly what you are trying to achieve before you can actually put out that quality product.
Right. I myself did a lot of years of embroidery, just watching it embroider, playing with all the different threads, testing with the tensions, fabrics, backings, and all that. And that's kind of how I learned the industry product, going to trade shows and things like that. When I went to go work with the digitizing software, the biggest challenge for me was I knew what I had to do with the threads, and I knew where I had to put the underlay and the toppings, and the fills, and that pull and push. The hardest thing for me to learn was the software. So I did struggle with that at first. I tried, I failed, I tried, I failed, until I realized that the software companies all have videos and things like that you can watch. So it's very time consuming to learn it. But once you learn it, the value that you bring to your business is huge. And that goes back to that, knowing what your value is and being able to charge appropriately. But it's totally worth spending the time to learn your digitizing software.
You have to. You absolutely have to. If you want to put out a quality product, you've got to know your software. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
So, Yeah. And I spent hours and hours and hours, and I do to this day. If I'm doing a sew out, I stand there and I watch it.
Yep.
I watch the whole thing sew out so that I know where that needle is supposed to go. And if it's not working right, okay, we got to stop it. We got to fix it.
Right.
So, but you need to watch it every step of the way.
Absolutely. And the one thing I learned when I was doing that and testing is sometimes breaking your design apart a little bit just to stitch out the part that you're working on. Sometimes I felt like, I had a 30,000 stitch design and the part I wanted to work or look at was at the end. And I'm like, okay, why don't I just take that part, pull it apart, that element, I should say, pull it out and stitch that out. So that's just a little bit of, that I learned the hard way in order to figure that out. But Joyce, she's talking about how you really just want to watch it as it's embroidering out because you want to see what it's doing, making sure it's leaving no gaps and it's overlapping the way you want it to. And, you're getting your blends and everything looks good.
You can't put it in the machine and walk off.
Right. No, you can't.
And I have been in so many shops and that's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work that way.
Until you hear the beep beep and, it stopped embroidering and then they're going back. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. When you're testing and, learning and, for your first design that maybe you're doing for a new customer or something like that, you want to make sure that everything looks good on that design and they're going to be happy with it. I find, Joyce, that this industry is full of so many helpful people. They're so friendly with each other. They're always willing to help. And there's just always an avenue out there for, quick questions, whether you're on someone's blog page, videos like what we're doing today. And I think, it's not as competitive as other industries. How do you feel about that?
I feel the same way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I started, everything was totally closed mouth. I couldn't get any information out of anybody.
Wow.
And it just, of course, this was, 44 years ago. So there were no mentors out there for this. And you were on your own. I mean, that's all the way there was to it. And my first experience was going to a Stitches conference. And that was fun because, I mean, goodness sakes, there were people there that were actually embroiderers.
Yeah.
And it was just so much fun.
They wanted to help.
Yeah.
You were there to help you.
Yeah.
So, having people like yourself who have created a business to help is invaluable, because you do need it. So you mentioned Stitches and I can see your Stitches plaques up on the wall.
Oh, yeah, I've got them hanging all the way around my walls.
Yes. I think the first time I saw you was on the cover of Stitches magazine.
Oh my.
And it was, you were looking all tough because you were there as the embroidery coach and you're going to go in and help them. So that was my first impression of you.
Oh my. Yeah, I've had other people say I went into one company where they showed this to their employees and they had called me to come in and help them and they were scared to death.
Yep. Yeah, they did a great job with that cover. And it was awesome. Thank you, Joyce, for joining us today. It was a great pleasure talking to you.
And thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure speaking to you today.
Thank you. You can reach Joyce at theembroiderycoach.com on her website where all her services and information is available there, including her social media buttons. So you can reach out to her and check out what she has to offer anytime. I am Nancy Minnie here at Madeira USA and want to thank you for spending your time with us today.